Welcome, everyone. It's our Wednesday night course spotlight. I'm Kathy Lawson, Chief Knowledge Officer of the Great Discovery. And if you were on our last session and we were talking about the Great Discovery and its history, one of the great things about using the Great Discovery as the core course and then building from it is as you run into roadblocks and you have questions, well, guess what? And you need information. We have a platform full of courses designed to help you answer those questions and work with some amazing people. And tonight is no different. As Ed said, changing careers, one of the most critical pathways. That was how a lot of the work I did originally on the Great Discovery is helping people change careers. So very important topic, has always been. Really excited to hear what Jessie has to say. But let me tell you a little bit about her. She's got an amazing bio. Jessie Perez is a leader and consultant of reconciliation, helping individuals and businesses identify their purpose and joy, forging a path to success through collaboration. She's the author of multiple books, a speaker, a trainer, consultant, and a coach. Her time-tested strategy in business analysis and the human temperament makes her uniquely impactful in a variety of settings. Jessie also has extensive cross-cultural experience, working and serving in over 18 different countries. She continues to build cultural bridges both domestically and internationally. Jessie guides you into reconciliation and alignment, giving you powerful tools to realize success and find the joy and peace that comes with that. So tonight, Jessie's going to talk about her course called Career Transition Training, what you need to know if you're changing careers. And the floor is yours, Jessie.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate that warm welcome. Ed, thanks so much for the recommendation. I appreciate that as well. It's such a joy to be with you all today. And as I kind of step into this, I just want to endorse what we heard earlier about the Lean Six Sigma. I'm sorry, about the Six Sigma. So being myself a green belt in Lean Six Sigma, I really, just appreciate the value that brings. And so if you have not gone and checked that course out, I highly recommend that. So as we dive in with this particular topic, one of the things that we think about in life is what do I want to do, right? The kids are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And as an early age, we're trying to foster that desire to understand what that path looks like. But rarely is the path the one we expect, right? So you may have a child, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a doctor. Nowadays, I'm going to be a YouTuber, right? Everybody wants to be a YouTuber when they're 9. So there is an expectation, and then life happens, right? And you go down that path where the doors open. And having set up a nonprofit for the purpose of workforce development, one of our goals is opening those doors for career paths, sustainable career paths, for people that maybe never thought a career was possible. And along that journey, those doors have to open. You're going to be part of the process of opening that door, though. That's not something that just happens. Now, there is an opportunity, but it's going to be your job to put yourself in position to be able to step through that opportunity and take advantage of it. So in addition to what those opportunities are, you need to be prepared. And being prepared looks like a few different steps. You can't just say, okay, I have experience, therefore I'm going to get the job, right? You can't necessarily say, oh, I don't have experience, so I'm not going to get the job. It really boils down to a lot of different elements. And in this particular course, I break those down with kind of a fine tuning. And I'm going to share with you just some of the categories in this topic tonight that really helps you to understand what would I get out of this course and what do I need to be thinking about even before taking the course? What is it that if I'm thinking about changing careers, or if I'm forced into changing careers, because unfortunately, that's not always our own choice, right? And so as we're taking those steps forward, we say, okay, how can I present myself to where I can march a path forward into a career, not only that is sustainable, but then I would actually enjoy. It's probably the worst thing I can think of for somebody to go through 8 years of post-secondary school, right? So you go through your bachelor's program, and then you go to med school or law school or whatever it is to graduate after spending all that money or having all that student debt to find out you don't like your career. That's a horrible place to be, right? And so one of the things that I do, and Kathy mentioned that I have several books. One of my books is called Color by Design. Color by Design is a book that helps you understand who you are and how you think. And it really dives into helping you understand your needs, your strengths, your joys, and your values in ways that maybe you have not recognized before because you didn't think about yourself that way, right? We're not taught how to really kind of break ourselves down into components in ways that we can process who we are. I always thought that people were very arbitrary and hard to figure out until I went through this True Colors and started to teach it to corporate entities, and then do workshops and write the book on it. And I really incorporate that into understanding what your next career is, because if you don't know yourself, you could get a next career, but you might not like it. And my goal is to not only help you get your next career, but also help you find the right path that will help you not only be able to handle the finances that you need in your family, but also be able to enjoy the work that you do. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to really kind of walk us through 6 different elements here. The first is who you are, right? Being able to understand that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. The next is what you want. And so this dives into a little bit more, even about what we were just hearing about the Sigma, right? What are your values, right? What are those things that you're trying to aim at? But then also, what have you done? What does your past look like? What is your experience? What are your skills? And this is different from what you've done. And we'll talk about that as well. And then you want to consider feedback. We get feedback all the time. Sometimes we're inundated with feedback, but we're going to talk about feedback specifically and what that looks like and why it's important to be able to consider it and recognize it and what to do with it. Then you need to take action, because you can have all those different pieces in place, but if you don't do anything with them, they're not going to take you anywhere. And so taking action is a step that you do really all along the way. I had one person actually ask me, they're like, well, what if, I can't barely even get myself out of bed? How am I going to take action to go have those interviews? And I told her, I said, taking action doesn't always mean showing up at the interview. There are a lot of taking action steps that happen long before that. And the first one may even be just taking an hour and finding out what's out there, taking an assessment of yourself, trying to understand yourself. Those are little baby steps, but they're still taking action. And so don't get down on yourself because you haven't won the prize yet, right? Or eaten the whole pie. It's a step process, and you have to walk through it in a way that takes those little bites to be able to get to your end destination. So as we think about who we are, there are different kinds of assessments out there. I'm not saying True Colors is the only one. It's all based on the same science, though, and really starting to understand who you are. What are the things that you enjoy in life? What drives you crazy, right? You want to maybe avoid those things a little bit more. And then once you kind of have an idea of who you are and what you think you might enjoy, then you get to say, well, what do I want? And this goes into other things like, do I really care about work-life balance right now? Do I really care about a paycheck right now? Do I really care about finding something that my mission, is really in my heart? There are different things that drive us towards different careers, but it also has to do with the phase in our life, right? Somebody who's just starting out and this is their kind of first attempt, man, they're going after that paycheck. They couldn't care less about work-life balance, right? They don't have kids at home. They're just trying to say, man, let me make as much money as I can, as fast as I can. But you get into other phases in your life and you're going to have different values, right? You're going to have things that you want it to see in a career. And for me right now, work-life balance is huge. Do I get that every day? Absolutely not. But that is a value that I'm going to make sure I make as a priority as I go through my work. Then you want to think about, what have you done? Not, oh, what have you done? Not scolding, right? We're talking about, what have you done in your life? What kinds of experiences have you had? And this may not just be in your work environment either. You want to really take kind of full inventory. Have you had cross-cultural experience? Have you started to learn a new language? Have you done customer service, whether it was paid or not paid, right? Maybe you volunteered when you were a teenager, at the homeless shelter. There are so many different things you can take into what your experience is. So take inventory of your experience. It's probably a lot wider than you really think it is. The next thing you want to do is you want to look at your skills. Now, I said earlier, this is different than what you've done, right? So a lot of people, you think of your resume, okay? And so if you have a resume, you've had a resume in the past, that is often a list of, this is my experience in school, this is my experience in work. And when you look at it, it's a lot of job title and some duties, right? This is what I actually produced. Sometimes you'll have some figures associated with that, percentages perhaps, but it rarely gets into the skill sets. And that's the piece that somebody who's going to be looking at a career transition, that's where you need to really put in a lot of time and focus. And that's something that, people who do career coaching, myself, and I heard some others on the call and others, they can help with if you don't know where to start. Because while you may have done customer service, there are skills that you used in there that are transferable to a job that has nothing to do with customer service. You may have worked for the government and done research there. And that's actually one that I just saw an article on the other day is, there's a lot of researchers who are being let go or given the option to go, right? And one of their biggest concerns is, I researched something that's so specific, so niche, that how can I be hired? They don't have that particular type of research other places. And that's where somebody like me would come in and say, no, forget what you were researching. That's what you've done. The skill set is your ability to research. The skill set is knowing where to find answers, how to think about problems in that format. So what they need to do is they need to go in and draw out those skill sets, highlight those skill sets. And that's what's going to give them that differentiator to be able to be hireable into either another path of research or a completely different career path that would leverage those skills. And so that's why you want to really understand at first, who am I? Because I want to know when I start looking at jobs out there, what relates to me? What do I connect with, right? What do I want, right? So what kind of balance do I want? What kind of environment do I want? Am I looking at hybrid? Do I need to stay in the city I'm in? All those kinds of things. And then combining what you have done and drawing the skills out of that so that you can then apply those skills into your resume. From there, I really want you to take a moment and consider feedback. This is any feedback that you've gotten, solicited or unsolicited. It could be positive feedback. Somebody say, man, you really do a good job at, or I really like how you do fill in the blank. Okay. Then there's what I call constructive feedback. And some people might call that negative feedback. I don't see it as negative unless somebody has an ill intent, right? So constructive feedback maybe points out some areas maybe you weren't so good or had an opportunity. Constructive feedback and positive feedback both have a very important place to play in us evaluating ourselves. We have to stop and say, let me first take in that feedback. And that's the first step, okay? Take in the feedback. This is interesting because this is a step a lot of people miss, especially with positive feedback. The first thing they say is, oh, it wasn't me. And that they let it just go right over. They don't let it actually kind of sink in. And absorbing, being able to embrace the feedback. And then second step is evaluating the feedback. Does this line up with what other feedback has been given? If I'm hearing the same constructive feedback from multiple sources in different ways, maybe I do have a problem, right? Maybe there's something that I need to work on. And instead of trying to brush it off or make excuses for it, take an opportunity. And here's the best way that you can engage constructive feedback. Get curious. Somebody comes to me and says, Jessie, you've got to stop interrupting. It's bothering me. It makes everybody feel unhappy. I'm going to first stop and say, first, do I recognize I do that? If I do, and I'm working on it, okay, let me work on it more, right? If I don't recognize I'm doing it, get curious. I didn't realize I was interrupting. Can you show me an example or tell me an example when I've done that? Because if I'm doing that, I want to get better at it. Do you see how there's an ownership taken there? I stopped, I evaluated, considered, and then I got curious. And as we do that, it allows people to feel comfortable to be able to share more with us. The more feedback we can get, the more we can start to understand ourselves and grow ourselves. I was helping out with a career transition group down in Brentwood, Tennessee, a month or so ago. And there was this one candidate there, and he was getting feedback from one of the coaches, and he wasn't absorbing the feedback. I was watching him, and he was already figuring out what he was going to say before the feedback was even given to him. And sometimes that's a problem. Sometimes we start thinking about our response before we actually stop and listen to what's being said. And so after this happened a few times, I said, can I ask you a question? And Kenneth said, okay. I said, when he gave you feedback, did you, and as soon as I said that, he started talking. I said, wait, before you respond, did you hear the feedback he gave you, or were you already preparing your response? And he stopped and he goes, oh. I said, do you need him to give you that feedback again so you can absorb it? And he said, I think so. So he gave him the feedback again. I said, okay, now this is what I'm going to give you for feedback. Every time you're engaging with somebody, hold whatever you want to say, just put it off until after they finish talking, and then you can respond. I said, that's the feedback I'll give you. I said, now, did you absorb that feedback? How did that feel? And he was already starting to transition into that feedback and absorb it and do something with it. Now, I can't tell you where that went. I didn't have the privilege of seeing him again after that, but these are little steps that we take. And now he is a little bit closer to being able to be hireable when he gets through the interview process because of that simple feedback. So take feedback seriously, do something with it. Are there feedback that's given that is totally off point? Absolutely. That's why it's important to recognize it and evaluate it first, but don't just brush it off, and especially if you've heard it more than once. And then that final step is really to take action. And that's where you put all these pieces together and you say, now, what am I going to do about this, right? I know kind of what I'm looking for. I have my skills on my resume. I've taken in account of all my feedback. And now that action step, that's where you say, okay, these are the kinds of jobs that fit into the category of what I've put together as my framework. Let me see what's out there. Let me start to apply to those based on what I've been able to pull together. And it could take anywhere from, a few days to a month to pull all this together and get you ready if you're actively working on it, depending on where you start. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of time to do this. But this is a process that I teach, kind of breaking it down in this particular class to help people and prepare them for that next step. It's a big deal. So you want to make sure you make the right choices and are able to come out of it with something that you enjoy and you're really looking forward to. Now with that, I'm going to just pause there for just a moment. I see we're coming up on time. I want to make sure that there's time for questions too. Because when you're thinking about this, this is a pathway that if maybe this isn't for you, maybe you know somebody who's going through this and you can, be able to convey this information and some of these steps, or even send them to the class and let them take those steps for themselves. This is something that can be used over and over again. These are things that are tried and true. They work. And if you went through something similar before, you can use it again in 10 years and it's still the same because it's the principle of it, it's the foundation of it. And so it doesn't matter if it's technology or hospitality, the same principles apply.
All right, thanks, Jessie. Anybody have any questions? And while they're thinking about questions, I have a question because I've done some coaching and career transition and all that. And I always find it really interesting, especially someone who's worked, and you've got a nonprofit, it sounds like, for work development. What are you seeing currently on trends as far as how many times people change careers in their lifetime? I mean, it used to be you'd get out of college and you'd get a job, and many people stayed at the company their whole life. And certainly that's not the way it is anymore. And then it's kind of moved to, well, maybe I changed jobs a couple times, to people changing jobs and full on careers quite a bit. So what are you seeing from the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so one of the common themes that has been pretty prevalent over the last 8 years or so has been a 2 or 4 year trend. And so the 4-year trend is the folks that, they're going to put in the work, they're going to grow, and they're going to hold on until they feel like they can't hold on. And then they're going to say, you know what, let me see what's out there and go ahead and switch. Okay. So that's kind of one trend. Another trend is the 2-year trend. And that's where they're not there to grow. They're there to get the next role, and they're going to be there long enough until they can level up to the next role. I do think that if you appropriately blend the two, it's okay. I think that too much of the 2-year trend is going to make you look like you're not consistent and eventually make you less desirable in the hiring market. I think the 4-year trend is fine. I don't think that there's any risk really in that hiring market. It also gives you a chance to grow in that area, because unfortunately, even the hard jobs that you really don't like and the pressure, they still stretch you and grow you in ways that when you come out of it, you're better for it, right? I see a bunch of hands up. So Tim, Joyce, Brian.
So let's start with Brian. That looks like
Okay.
he got this up first.
Hi, uh, I'm guessing that there's going to be a big need for this, what's going on in Washington right now. And so what is the funnel to take people through what you've got? Do you have free content to expose them and Genius Club and you've already mentioned 2 courses, so could you give us an overall feel and then do we have a transition into people working with you at the end and give us the overall scope.
Brian, I just need to go ahead and hire you to help me set all that up right now because I am in the process of setting that up and I don't have it as effective and all in place. I need to work on my funnels. I need to work on kind of that transition piece. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. I really appreciate you because that will be some next steps that I'm walking into.
And let me just say, this course is a premium course, right? But you have a free course, correct? Or you are?
I don't think I've set up the free course yet. I have it pending. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll look for that and we'll push that, and then that gives people a chance to get to know you, so that they want to take your premium course. Although I think the premium course is such a hot topic right now that I think it's a pretty easy sell in a lot of places. So you know, you can definitely go there. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, Jessie. Great job. You're really clear and concise on this, and it seems like you really know your stuff. My question on this is supposing that someone's in a career or a job, you know, and an entire category just of service or related employment suddenly just starts to fade away. You end up getting laid off unexpectedly from a career that you may have spent 10, 20, 30 years on. And what would you suggest is the first step? You just lost your job. That whole market for people in that type of a career path is suddenly not in demand. What do you do? What's the first thing?
You know, first thing is it depends on what financial status they're in, right? If they're living paycheck to paycheck, that's a different answer than if they've got a nice nest egg built up. And the reason I say that is because a lateral move is the most logical. So within every market, there are things that are kind of corresponding or touching that may not have disappeared the same way. And because they have worked closely with the understanding of that, that's probably going to be their first, the easiest route that they can take. With that said, if they're paycheck to paycheck, there's probably not a great opportunity for them to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what that best lateral move is and to just evaluate those positions that connect with what they have done in ways that is either direct skill leverage or, for example, a business analyst and a project manager. They don't do the same thing, but they're in the same realm. And so being able to leverage some skills and go lateral into one of those is an example of how that could work. Very different job, but they lived in the same world, right? Now, somebody who has a good nest egg, I would say take a little time. Decide if that's where you want to stay. If you want to go to a lateral within the same kind of thing, or you know what, if you want to spend 3 months figuring out who you are and what you want your next steps to be, I would say don't wait longer than 6 months though, because you don't want to look like you've been out of the market because you can't be hired, right? So there's that as well.
Thank you so much. Then the other option is also you can go learn a new career path on the Great Discovery.
That's right. Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Jessie. Appreciate you.
All right, go ahead, Joyce.
Thank you. Great information, Jessie. I have a 7. He's turning 17. He's brilliant, smart in school, but he thinks he knows more than the teachers. He'll just get up and walk out of the room. It's heartbreaking. Would the book be a good way to start out with him so that we can find out where he wants to go in his life?
Yes, I have some models within the book that really go into the joys and the strengths. Those joys and strengths are probably the 2 areas you're going to want to kind of dive in. Get him through the book, and you can go through the book with him. This will actually help you guys even build your relationship, because the whole idea is to understand yourself and others better, to break down walls and build bridges. So coming out of reading that book together as a family, you guys will be able to have more meaningful and more understanding conversations of each other as well, plus helping him identify those strengths and those joys. And then you can look at what jobs kind of connect in with those strengths and joys and say, let's start thinking about your future. Because if he thinks he knows more and he's walking out, it sounds to me like he's bored. Sounds to me like, you know, he's ready to move on. He's ready to go after that career. And if you can help him identify some areas in the what that might look like, he can go sit in on some conferences for that area. See if that's what really tickles, you know, his ideas and vision. You know, it's not too young for a teenager to go to career conferences for a particular area. And if he's like, man, I love that research thing, that really grabs me, or man, I really love whatever it is, right? So start to figure out what those joys are first, and then connect him with different things going on, even webinars for the topics. And then whatever he starts to really dive into, that's where he's probably going to zone in, and then figure out what kind of career paths fit in with that particular area.
Thank you. Your book is on Amazon?
It is, yep.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Joyce. All right, we started with Ed, we'll end with Ed, and then we'll transition to our next session. So go ahead, Ed.
All right. Well, Jessie, good to see you as always. So my question is, what are you working on now? Like, what is happening next? Like, what is the next book? Because I know you are always planning that. So what can we look forward to in your next book, and what area is that going to be in? And then I'll tell you one thing, I'm at your service. So if you need something, a funnel or anything like that, you know, you got me, you know, as a resource. So you can reach out to me or James anytime. Okay. I just want you to know that you need help. You got our support 100%.
Thank you so much.
All right, go ahead.
I absolutely appreciate that more than you can know. And I'm going to take you up on that. And so the next, well, so I'm very diverse. I've got a lot going on at any given time, but my next book's actually coming out in May. And that one is actually a practical guide to living with a narcissist. So I'm actually leveraging my people understanding and my business analysis. And I've actually studied clinical narcissism from the inside, not myself, but somebody I was living with for a period of over 6 years, and actually discovered an entire new cycle in this clinical pattern, which I call the learning phase. And so this is something I've not found in any write-up so far. And it's really going to be very impactful. I'm currently coaching 2 women who are having to walk through this path. And I'm going to be releasing this in May. So more to come on that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing
That's
that.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessie. This was fantastic. Looking forward to seeing more courses from you on the platform. And I think the one you've got is amazing and will be incredibly necessary very soon, sooner rather than later, for sure. So thanks you again. And we're going to move on to our next session.